Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com. Wow, that was a long break, wasn't it? It's been almost 2 months since I last recorded a proper episode. Things just, life just got in the way, essentially. Between being sick in April, my daughter finally got a job and moved away. We had just weekend plans quite a bit, including more recently for Memorial Day weekend where we went out of town. So it wasn't that I haven't wanted to record an episode. It's just that things just got in the way of it. I've been wanting to record for several weeks now. This is at the time of this recording, it is the first weekend in June, and I am home all alone. My wife and kids are out of town visiting my daughter, who, like I said, moved away. And they're also doing doing stuff for the upcoming wedding later this summer. So I'm here all alone in the house. Got nothing better to do than to talk about some comics. And I got 3 trades to talk about today. And there's one in particular that I've been waiting anxiously to talk about for quite a while because I kind of fell in love with it. And it just so happens that there's a Kickstarter coming up for this particular for the sequel for this particular book. So it's apropos for me to talk about it. And that book is Molly Danger. After that, I'll be talking about Pix. And then finally, The End Times of Bram and Ben. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? So first up is Molly Danger. This was from Action Labs, but like I said, it was funded by Kickstarter. Jamal Igle is the the writer and artist on this, with Juan Castro on inks, Romulo Fajardo, I don't know, on colors, and Frank, boy, I'm going to mess this name up, Chekovich, perhaps, on letters. So this came out in 2013. So it's been quite a while that I've been wanting to talk about this. But that's the nice thing about trades is pretty much, well, actually any comic, but I for some reason I think of trades as more evergreen, if you will, to talk about. So I guess I was kind of aware of Molly Danger, the original Kickstarter for Molly Danger, but I did not, for some reason, contribute to it. I think I was just kind of wary of Kickstarter at that time, even though I do like Jamal Igle's work. But it wasn't until I think it was the Free Comic Book Day preview of Molly Danger, or at least a promotional item. I don't remember if the trade came out before the Free Comic Book Day issue or not. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Like I said, I picked up the Molly Danger Action Lab, I believe, Free Comic Book Day issue, and read through it and told myself immediately, I have to get this book. So I ordered it at the very next time that I could. And when it arrived, I was pleasantly surprised. Well, I was surprised anyway. I wouldn't say pleasantly at first, but now I appreciate it. But it's a big book. It's about 9x12s. It's a hardcover. This is book 1 of Molly Danger. It's got a great large image of Molly. Kind of looks like she's jumping out at you on the cover here. And that's the nice thing about this book is that because it's such a large format, this gives Jamal an opportunity to play with the imagery, get more detailed. Things are just larger, more expressive, and I really enjoyed that once I got through it. But it does not fit well on my shelf. This is my comic book OCD coming into it, but when I have stuff on my bookshelves where I have all my trades, I kind of like everything to be situated on the shelf so it's like one smooth line of books, if you will. and Molly Danger kind of sticks out. But that's okay, because it should stick out because it is a really good book. Spoilers there. Oh, and I guess I should, just in case, warning you, I will be talking about these 3 trades, and I will be talking about particular things in it. Be warned. But, I'm just trying to get you interested in these. Hopefully I won't go too far into the specifics and I won't spoil anything, but just in case, there you go. There's your warning. Okay, some more things. Let's see. This is, like I said, it's a 9x12 hardcover. There's 48 art pages with some front and back matter stuff in there as well. So, and this was priced at $20, I believe. That's the cover price. So you get 48 large size pages for your $20. I thought that was a pretty good price. So just recently, Mr. Eigel started a Kickstarter for book 2, and I immediately went on and pledged. Unfortunately, not enough people agreed with the goals of this new Kickstarter, and it did not succeed in its fundraising goals. So what Mr. Eigel is going to do is retool the project into a 6-issue series coming out next year. He says July 2016, which is great. That's potentially more Molly Danger, and I'm all for that. And I'll gladly go and contribute to the new Kickstarter, which begins, by the way, June 19th, 2015. So I highly encourage you guys out there who may be interested in this, or you're just fans of Jamal Eigel in general, or maybe you read Molly Danger but wasn't aware for some reason of this new Kickstarter, to please go pledge, just so I can get. It's very selfish of me, I know. I want this book, so I want you guys to go spend your hard-earned money on it. But that, like I said, that will start on June 19th, so you can go to mollydanger.com for more information starting June 19th. You can also follow Jamal Eigel on Twitter at Jamal Eigel. It's JAMALIGLE. There's also a Twitter handle for Molly Danger. It's Go Molly Danger. Just search for that and you can find it. I'll try to remember to put all this stuff in the show notes for you. Anyway, enough promoting the next series. We're here to talk about book 1 of Molly Danger. So, Molly is, I'll just give hopefully a brief synopsis of what this book is about without spoiling it too much. Molly is an alien. She crash landed with her family on Earth about, 20 years prior to the opening of the story. She looks like a normal 10-year-old girl, Earthling, if you will. But her family, unfortunately, her brother and her mother and father both perished in the crash. And she spent a year, Molly did, in a coma, during which time her body adjusted to, as they say in the book, Earth's atmosphere. So it's kind of like the Superman story in a way, because once she wakes up, they find that she is very strong. As one character says, she can lift a Sherman tank over her head, and she's very, I was going to say durable, but she's nigh invulnerable. So essentially, she doesn't fly. She doesn't have the gamut of Superman's powers, which is nice. So we are told through character dialogue, giving a back history of things. There's some kids on a field trip at the Molly Dome, because she's immensely popular. She's just like a celebrity, like we have now, except she's a super powered one. She works for DART, which stands for Danger's Action Response Team, and so they are a quasi-legal entity, I guess. They assist law enforcement in, I think it's called Coopersville. This town called Coopersville. I think, I should have looked this up. I think it's in New York. Yeah, New York. It says so on the back cover. Fortunately for me. Anyway, so she helps with law enforcement, And there's a whole system of people, a support staff essentially, surrounding her and helping her out. And that's why we meet the second character, or the co-star of the book, and that is Austin Briggs, who is when we first meet him, he's a helicopter pilot in the police force in Coopersville, because he decides to help out Molly, because once Molly arrives to take care of the situation, the cops are supposed to hang back and let her do it because things can get pretty dangerous. And of course that does happen. However, Austin, he's a maverick, he's a rule breaker, and he decides to go in and help Molly anyway, which gets him fired, but then he gets a job offer from DART and becomes Molly's pilot. Molly also has a rogues gallery of sorts. They're referred to as super mechs. And curiously enough, in the story, they talk about how the super mechs basically started terrorizing Coopersville and taking on Molly about a year after she debuted, as Molly Danger, working with DART. So that's kind of weird, and I'm really curious to see how that pans out, what why that is. And also to see if there are other villains of the story, if you will. And curious to see if there's other villains to the story besides these super mechs. But that is potentially for book 2. Anyway, like I said, Austin is Molly's new pilot. You also meet his wife and his stepson, Brian, who Austin says hates him. And I guess I could kind of understand why. Brian's dad, I believe, was a firefighter who died about 3 years prior to the opening of this story. So Brian's having a tough time with the fact that Austin has married his mother and, quote unquote, replacing his dead father. There's quite a bit of tears on Kid's face in this book, including Molly. Molly cries several times in the course of the story because she's so alone. The director, whose name I can't remember now, she gives Austin the lowdown essentially. Basically, don't become friends with Molly. Don't talk to her. She needs to be secluded because she's not human and she is dangerous. As the director says, she's a weapon. But of course, like I said, Austin is a maverick. He's a rule breaker. So of course he doesn't listen to that. After the stunt with one of the super mechs, because Austin doesn't do what he's told by DART Central. Although they did end up stopping one of the super mechs, what's his name? Slipscott, which is a weird name for a speedster. So why, I'm not sure. Slipstream, but that's probably taken, so I'm not sure why Scott. Regardless, Austin gets put on KP duty essentially, and so he brings Molly dinner, and she asks him to stay because she doesn't like to eat alone. And so he does. And then there's a later mission where, and this is another curious item in the book, because they get called to a mission and they get to the place where they're supposed to go and there's nothing going on. It was very weird. So I kept waiting for that to pan out in this first book, but it doesn't. So again, maybe book 2. So because they have free time on their hands, Austin takes Molly to his house to meet his wife and his son, who, it turns out, is a huge Molly fan. So when Austin calls Brian downstairs, Brian walks in and sees Molly, gets this look of utter surprise and shock, and it's great the way that Jamal Igle drew this. And then he immediately turns around and goes back upstairs, to everyone's surprise. And we follow Brian back upstairs, and he's sitting on his bed, and you see all the posters of Molly behind him and other Molly paraphernalia that he's bought or his parents have bought him. And then there's this close up on basically just Brian's mouth, and he's smiling. And then later there's another scene after that where they're all sitting there talking, and Brian and Molly become fast friends. And in the end, so like I said, the super mechs are the baddies of this universe, and we get to see a bunch of them kind of getting together, including Slipscott, Medulla, who is the super mech that opened up the book. He's basically an automaton with a brain inside of a glass dome. It's kind of neat looking. There's a Cro-Magnon type character as well. Can't remember his name. Anyway, they all get gathered together after Slipscott is freed from the prison bus where he's being transferred. And then their father shows up. And he's in shadow, but he talks about basically getting all of his creations together, including some that we haven't seen yet. And off they go into the night. And so that sets up the potential conflict for the next book. So, like I said, I really enjoyed this book. It's an all ages book. It's done in a wonderful large format, so you get to see the great art. It's done very well. Jamal Igle is an artist whose work I really enjoy. It's very clean. It's very modern superhero-y type stuff. It's just a lovely story featuring an unusual character, an unusual superhero type character. Although he does kind of borrow heavily on more established tropes, but it's not hard to do that in today's comic book superhero publishing world. So I tend to give him a little bit of leeway there, and I think it's paid off so far in this book. And there's these really interesting supporting characters. There's a lot of emotional baggage in some of these characters that I'm sure will play out over time, including especially Molly, given her situation. Oh, I forgot to mention there's one other weird thing too. So this is the third weird thing. Molly has some sort of cloning program that she's working on. That at one point she gets a message on her notepad that the cloning process is complete, but nothing is beyond that is shown for that. So again, that's another thing coming up. Maybe she's trying to clone her brother that she mentions. She barely remembers him now, but she misses him terribly. Or maybe she's just trying to clone like a super pet or another friend like her, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter because we'll see it eventually. But these things intrigue me. These mysteries that Jamal has set up for this book and for this character. I mentioned the expressive faces earlier, so it's the whole book just kinds of. Let's try that again. This whole book just kind of comes across as very cinematic. It's not just the size of the book, although that's a big part of it. It's also the characters, the facial expressions, the world building that he's done, the detail that were shown in the costumes and the clothing. It's very well done. I really, really like this book. I think it has, like I said, it's a great new superhero world. It's full of potential and broad appeal. It's an all ages book that works on several levels. So, like I said, please consider contributing to the Kickstarter that starts on June 19th. So, like I said, go to mollydanger.com for more information. Highly recommend this book. So, go check it out. Another all-ages book that I ran across that I really enjoyed having read it recently is called Pix, One Weirdest Weekend. So this is by Greg Scheigel, I believe, with color assists, it says, from Paul Tutroni and Chris Dickey. This came out in 2014, apparently, but I bought it this year in 2015, and I remember seeing it several months back in previews. So I'm not sure if this is a new edition. I don't know. It's done in chapters, so I'm not even sure if this is an OGN or if it's a collection of stuff that I missed before. But it doesn't matter. Basically, when I was looking through previews, I was looking through the indie section, and I saw the cover to this, which shows Pix on here. Pix is a young teenage girl. She's blonde, she's pretty, and she flies. And she has on in here on the cover, she's got this purple, yellow, and white suit that she's wearing. It looks really cool. She's got this look of happiness and wonder. There's a quality of wonder to it. Maybe I'm just bringing that to the picture, but that's how I took it. And it just looked really like a lot of fun to read. And so I, not knowing anything other than that little blurb in previews, no preview art or anything, I ordered it because I thought, well, if nothing else, it looks like a book that my kids would enjoy. But I enjoyed it thoroughly. Let's see here. Yeah, the art, it's got a kind of a wacky Silver Age-esque feel to it in terms of the weird things that happen to Pix. It's got a great supporting cast, and there's a few instances in the way that the narration is done. That's probably the best way to put it. The narration is done. I'll get to that in a second. So the cast of this book is, like I said, Pix, but that's her nickname. That's her superhero name. But her full name is Emmeline Laurel Pixley. She can fly. She's super strong, and she's durable. It says so. She's basically like Molly Danger, only older, blonde, and she can fly. She claims during a TV interview in the first chapter of the book, she claims that her father is a fairy king and thus explains her superpowers. And there is, if you look at look at her costume, in the back, it looks like fairy wings the way that the back of her costume kind of flares up when she's flying. At first I thought they were fairy wings, but there are other pictures of her when she's not in that suit where it's clear that she does not have wings. So I thought that was a great touch. Speaking of the costume, she has two friends, Cherry and Reggie, two of her girlfriends. And Cherry is the one who made the costume, while Reggie is the one who designed it. Also in the book and plays a significant part of the story is Seth, who is a childhood friend of Pix's, and who also crushes really hard on Pix. Finally, there is Noah, who is a young neighbor boy that Pix sometimes babysits, and he has a dog named Bonus, and Bonus, the dog, can talk. And then there is Pix's parents, Laura and Ron, who is the stepfather. Ooh, interesting. I hadn't thought of this when I was preparing for the episode, but there are a few similarities here between Pix and Molly Danger, and more than just their superheroines. So interesting. And then there's the narrator who tells us stuff, of course. In fact, on page 7 of the book, there's a great one-page synopsis of who everybody is and basically what their role in the book is. And the narrator says, "And I'm your narrator. I'll chime in from time to time to let you know where things are happening. If time's passed, fill you in when it's needed, blah, blah, blah." But it's unusual. It's not something you see nowadays in comic books. So I really like that quality of it. So in general, Pix is a lot like other superheroes in this sense. She's a bit of a weirdness magnet, probably more than others in other superhero books that I've read over the years. Strange stuff just happens to her. For example, this runs throughout the book. There's basically one major incident per chapter in this book. So the first one I mentioned, she talks about her biological father. At a TV, it's a TV interview that she's at, and so while she's there, there's this actor who's also being interviewed, but suddenly the equipment, like the cameras, cables, and other equipment around, just suddenly comes to life and starts attacking people. And so Pix has to step in and save the day. Later, she's flying home, and she flies through this gray mist that shrinks her down to a very small size. And there's no real explanation given. It's just there it is, and she's suddenly small, and it becomes a problem because the TV actor that was on the interview with her, because Pix helps save him, he asks her out, and so she has to go home and get ready for a date. I forgot to mention, before she goes through that mist, she stops and gets some new shoes to go with the dress she's going to wear. And this old woman sells her these shoes. Well, then she goes through the mist. She's all shrunk down. She's freaking out about it. She's, for some reason, standing on the sink in her room, I think it was, or maybe it's the sink in the kitchen. I don't remember. But then she gets so riled up that she falls into the drain, goes down into the drain. And that's where another weird thing happens. Basically, she's attacked by a magic 8-ball with tentacles. It is so bizarre. And she basically fends off this thing that's living in this drain pipe, I guess. But she senses that she feels like she's starting to grow, like that mist, whatever that mist did to her, it's wearing off, and so she's starting to grow big again, like Alice in Wonderland. So she gets out of that, goes on the date with this guy, this actor, and everything's going well, I suppose. She's getting bored because the guy just won't stop talking about himself. Big surprise. And then this little girl comes over to get Pix's autograph. She's an admirer of Pix's. Well, the guy freaks out and starts mumbling something about this isn't how it's supposed to be. We had a deal. And then suddenly he starts turning red, not from embarrassment or anger, but because he's starting to turn into a dragon. I mean, come on, that's just crazy stuff in here. I love it. And it turns out to be a bit of a jerk. And so they end up fighting. She defeats him, but she defeats him with one of the shoes that she got from that the old woman earlier in the story. She basically hits the guy, the dragon, in the chest with a shoe, and that seems to stop him. Although I'm not quite sure. Oh no, I do remember that. Yeah, because the shoes were made out of some material that basically turns the dragon back into a guy. Well, it turns out the old woman is a dragon too. And so she is a white dragon and the guy is a red dragon and they're at war. And so she knew how to stop him. Anyway, it was just these random things just happened to Pix. There is from the beginning of the story, there is, you hear about the news about this escaped monkey from the zoo. Pix's stepfather, Ron, seems to be quite interested in that for some reason. Ron is kind of weird. He's always tinkering in his workshop or at wherever he works. There's one scene where he is working on this, it looks like a gold disc of some sort. It's not really clear what it is he's working on, but he's working on it intently. He doesn't seem to be too engaged in helping Pix's mom deal with this unusual situation with her daughter. In fact, Pix's mom and Ron have words several times throughout the course of the book about this. I'll come back to that in a minute. Anyway, so this, like I said, there's these news items about this missing zoo monkey, and it turns out that the zoo monkey is highly intelligent. I guess he's been experimented on. Anyway, it can talk, and it kidnaps Noah, because he thinks that Noah is able to talk to animals, because when Bonus, Noah's dog, talks to him, Noah seems to understand what Bonus is saying. Well, it doesn't quite turn out to be exactly what the monkey thought, but in the course of trying to rescue Noah, there's this frog that also talks that comes up to Pix and says, "I'm a prince. You need to kiss me to change me back." Well, this frog we've been seeing since the beginning of the story too. So I love that quality of this book, is that here's all these elements that eventually show up in later chapters that you see bits of earlier. So it's really nice to have that consistent call through in the book. Anyway, it turns out that the guy is enchanted. He has a mentor type character with him who's also enchanted. So the prince is a frog. The mentor guy, his advisor, I guess that's a better word. His advisor is an owl. And so you have this monkey and a dog. And Pix isn't going for any of this. She's just going to go save Noah from this situation, or find Noah. She doesn't know that he's been kidnapped yet. Anyway, the prince takes it upon himself, at the advice of the advisor, the owl, to kiss Pix's foot, because she's out in her jammies at this point. Because Bonus came, I'm really screwing this up. Bonus came to get Pix, and that's where we find out that Bonus actually talks to certain people, anyway, or certain people can understand him when he talks. And so she leaves her bedroom in her jammies, and she has these bunny slippers on. Okay, now back to the frog. The frog kisses her foot to try to elicit the change in him. Well, it doesn't work in the way that was intended, and the kiss, the enchantment, ends up turning Pix into a yellow bunny rabbit. Cute as hell, too, by the way. The way that Mr. Schigel drew that. So anyway, then they go and confront the monkey, and that gets taken care of. In the end, the prince ends up turning back into human along with the advisor. Everybody's back to their normal selves, if you will, and the prince, who acts a lot like a Disney character from like some of the medieval sort of time periods that Disney movies are set in. He kind of acts like that. And he acts very privileged, actually kind of like the guy from The Date as well. What is wrong with guys, right? Anyway, he basically not demands, but expects Pix to marry him because she's a princess, he's a prince. They've had this adventure together, they've kissed, and they should get married, right? That's how it's supposed to work. Well, of course, she wants nothing to do with this and rebuffs the guy. Well, he goes off in a huff, but he still, for some reason, wants to marry her. So the advisor ends up buying a house nearby, and so the guy is planning on wooing Pix. So I guess that's the next book. See another similarity there between Pix and Molly Danger. And then in the end, Ron and Laura have this brief conversation. It's the next to last panel of the book. And they talk about keeping Pix safe. Her mom says, I think she'd be safer knowing more. And Ron says, and yet her father disagreed. And Laura says, she's smarter than you are, or he realized. She'll figure it out. She's started to already. What does that mean? And then the very last page is a splash page of Pix and her two girlfriends just sitting there talking and, being general teenagers. And it was just really cute. It was a really cute story. There's just so much fun here for readers of all ages. Like I said, it's a good all ages book. Nicely inventive storytelling and pretty engaging characters. I didn't talk about Seth too much because mostly he spends his time basically pining for Pix. He decides he's going to tell her that he loves her, and then the whole prince situation rears its ugly head, and he walks away. But they're friends. I like the positive way in which the friends were portrayed in this book. This book was just such a treat for a blind buy. I had, like I said, I didn't know much about it, didn't know what to expect really art wise, and it turned out to be really, really cool. So I'm going to be on the lookout for Pix Volume 2. And finally, another fun book and funny book, but it is not definitely an all ages book. This is definitely not something you want to give someone under the age of, I don't know, a teenager. Let's put it that way. Not for the kiddies. This is the End Times of Bram and Ben. This is by writers James Asmus and Jim Festante, I believe. It's penciled by Rem Brew. Overdrive Studios did the colors, and letters is by Crank. This was put out from Image Comics. The volume I have was dated 2014. I think I remember seeing this in previews, but I just kind of dismissed it for some reason. The art style is not something that I particularly care for. It reminds me a lot of the art in Chew, from what I remember. I could be wrong about that. I might be thinking of two different things, but it just kind of, I don't know. It just had a certain look to it that I did not care for, just based on the cover image and the description of the series. I know I didn't really pay much attention to it when I saw that, but what I did pay attention to was reviews of the issues that I heard on the Fight for Comics podcast. And based on the glowing reviews and the description of the story, I decided to go ahead and get the trade when I saw it solicited. And I'm glad I did. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, there's a lot of jokes. I mean, I don't know. I probably should go through and count how many jokes per page, because there's a lot of stuff. Whether it's the people actually making, jokes in the dialogue, or you get a visual gag, or some combination of that. I would fill half an hour just talking about all the jokes in this book, but I won't do that. Let's see. So Ben and Bram are roommates, and they don't quite get along starting off in the story. Basically, Bram is the Oscar and Ben is the Felix, if you understand that odd couple reference. The book opens with them having an argument. Ben is tired of Bram's crap and tells him to go to hell, and then suddenly Bram disappears. And then Ben hears all this commotion outside, and there are people wrecking in the street, and he sees people disappearing. Just people are just vanishing for some reason. About 30 seconds later, Bram reappears naked in the apartment. Well, it turns out that Bram has been in heaven for weeks. So time works differently in heaven than it does on earth, and they conclude that this was the rapture. So all of the faithful got taken up to heaven. Bram, it turns out, did not care for heaven. It was pretty boring. Everybody's walking around naked, which is great in some cases and not in others, he said. And basically, he was sent back because he was told there was a clerical error. There's some other guy named Bram, I forget his last name, that they should have taken instead of him. So he gets sent back. Well, Ben is kind of beside himself because he thinks of himself as a good person. And that's a running gag too throughout the book, is where someone will talk about the fact that they were not raptured. And they always say, I'm a good person. And then you get this flashback shown in the next panel, basically showing why they're not a good person. And in Ben's case, he did kind of a no-no, perhaps. He was rolling up marijuana cigarettes and using the paper from a Bible. So there you go. That's one of the first big jokes in the book. Bram, however, decides to take advantage of this situation. He decides to declare his candidacy on TV. So there's some reporters out on the street interviewing people who are left behind. He declares his candidacy to become the next Antichrist and decides to make a huge-ass party out of it. It's just his way of having fun with the situation. Well, some people aren't so keen on this, as it turns out. However, there is one character that shows up that is glad to help Bram do this, and it's a demon. When he shows up to say, hey, I want to help you, Bram, become the next Antichrist, this angel appears, and it's a character we've seen at Ben's work. Ben is a school teacher, and which there was another bit, kind of a gag in there. He goes to his classroom, or a classroom, and there is one child, one boy in that classroom. Either the kids were kept home by their parents or they were raptured, because you do see at the very beginning of the story they show a few kids, playing at the beach, or in a stroller or something, disappearing because they're innocents. Anyway, so this guy, he's kind of a hunchback looking guy. He makes inappropriate comments. So he, at one point in the story, he comes up behind Ben and kind of grabs his shoulders and starts rubbing the guy's shoulders, and that kind of freaks Ben out. And the guy says he's just trying to help rub one out. And he says things like that all the time. Talks about going down on the demons, to destroy them, but that's not what he says. Anyway, things like that happen all the time. So it turns out this guy who is at the school turns out to be an angel, kind of keeping an eye on things. Well, the demon shows up, so the angel attacks him. They fight for a bit. The angel inadvertently kills one of Bram's followers, and so he, the angel's like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?" and kind of slinks off without finishing the battle. But he does enlist the aid of Ben to try and stop Bram from becoming the Antichrist, and Ben is still trying to get into God's good graces. He still can't accept the fact that he wasn't raptured, so he's doing what he can to be that good person that he thinks he really is. So Ben tries to take out Bram by drugging him. That in turn only gets them into the next situation, which is basically they do get to see the Antichrists. Yes, I said that plural, because the Antichrists in this rapture scenario turns out to be a Penn and Teller-like duo. These magicians, they look just like Penn and Teller in the book, but they're not called Penn and Teller. Things go bad from there, but in the end, one of the characters saves the day, so to speak. I won't go into the details of that. I don't want to spoil that part of it for you. And then the trade ends with a bonus, basically telling the story about the other Bram and what his experience with this whole rapture situation was. So that was really funny too. Like I said, so many jokes. It was like a huge part of this is like watching an Adam Sandler movie. So that may or may not sell it to you. But I mean, like I said, there's a lot of good stuff in here. I said this. I told you about the awkward angel phrases. Let's see. They're in one panel. There's a web browser showing stuff with hashtags like. There's a hashtag called Kirk Cameron was right, which I always thought was pretty funny. The angel. His name is Josiah. Josiah takes Ben on a short tour of hell to show him what they're up against. And we are shown various methods of torture. And this is the one that I thought was really funny. Basically, Josiah is talking about how for people who the demons can't easily come up with a torture, they do find ways to exploit the fears of the damned. And this one guy is shown. He's a toy collector, and he has to stand there and watch the demon open up mint toy packages, like action figure stuff in front of him, and the guy's just freaking out. Like I said, there's just way too many jokes to list, but it was really fun. Like I said, the art lends itself to the quirkiness of the story, which, like I said at the beginning of this, the preview art that I saw kind of turned me off a bit. And maybe that's because, like I said, I kind of equate it to the art of Chew. It's not exactly the same, of course, but I didn't care for Chew. I read the first 2 trades of it, and it was okay. I didn't quite understand what the big hoopla was about it with everybody else that was reading it. So maybe that played into my dismissal of Bram and Ben here. But having read it, I think the art really lends itself to how the story is told, the exaggerated quality of it. Sometimes, characters to accentuate the confusion or excitement or other kind of emotion. The eyes get big, or the head is bigger than everything else in the panel, or the hands are bigger. Just whatever the artist is trying to express, he does so in an exaggerated fashion. But it really works with this kind of a funny, jokey type of story. So I guess in the end, if you're not easily offended by stories about religion or religious satire, or maybe, just about anything, because they touch on a lot of things here, I really encourage you to give this a try. It was a pleasant surprise. It was a fun read. But like I said, do not give this to your 10-year-old. That's definitely not a good idea. So there you go. There are 3 fun comics that I've read recently. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear from you to know what you thought of these as well. If you do end up reading these based on listening to this and my recommendations, please let me know that as well. And you can always contact me by emailing me at longboxreview@gmail.com. You can also contact me in myriad other ways by going to longboxreview.com/feedback. And I'm also on Twitter, longboxreview, which is where I spend a lot of my time, probably too much, when I should be reading and talking about comics here. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.